Thanks for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. I'm Steven Jodarand.
And I'm Jake Watroba.
And on today's episode, we have friend of the show, Antoine Letran. He is the editor-in-chief of Culture Soccer, a French outlet covering U.S. soccer. Talk about coronavirus, Liga MX, and MLS.
Listeners, follow us on Twitter at UncSamSoccerPod. We always enjoy your feedback and comments, so continue to send them in. Don't forget, you can always find the show on any major podcast platform. Now, let's get to today's show.
Alrighty, Jake, I've already lost track of how many days it's been without sports. Cabin fever has been reduced. I don't know. I went on a walk. Walking's good. Listeners, I recommend walking. Obviously, walk not in a massive crowd of people, but go on walks. It's good for the brain, good for the soul. Get some fresh air, gets you out of your house without really infecting anybody.
Yeah, or you can be like me and just hunker down. You're fine. You know, just stay in your house. You can do that too. If you're a homebody.
You're a home. Yeah, that's fair. Anyway, we got a fantastic episode with Antoine talking all things. Well, not all things, but some MLS, some Liga MX, some European soccer, and obviously we talk about the coronavirus and just kind of give you some perspective of what life is like right now. Antoine spends time between England and France. And before we get to that, listeners, question of the day. This is probably the dumbest question I'll ever ask Jake on the show because this is such a question of the times. But if there is one player in Major League Soccer that you want on your team, in your case, you're Minnesota United, so whatever team that is, listeners, mention it in the comments or whatever way you send it to us. Who would you want?
I mean, it's Carlos Vela, isn't it? Isn't that kind of obvious?
Yeah, I guess.
Or you're gonna say, well, he doesn't show big games, so I want Jordan Morris. That's what you're gonna say, right? That's a
good. Well, what are we talking about? The playoffs? Maybe I'll take Jordan Morris. He had a pretty good playoff run there with Seattle last season. No, I mean Carlos Vela, Joseph Martinez if he were healthy. As much as I would say one of the Miami DPs, I just haven't seen them enough to say they're going to work in MLS. Like for all the crap that Ibrahimovic got while he was with the LA Galaxy, he performed. And I would say if he were still in the league, I'd take him. Why? Because he produced. Now, he had a ton of baggage with him. And I think he was a detriment to the Galaxy more so than he was a positive.
I think there also could be an argument to be made that maybe some of the players in the Galaxy are soft. Looking at you, Sebastian Lletget.
Whoa.
Especially considering how they talked about how it's like a weight or a burden lifted off their shoulders now that he's gone, and then they go and they lay an egg in their home opener against the Vancouver Whitecaps, and then they play a Houston Dynamo side that was missing a few key players to a 1-1 draw to open the season. I don't know. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying Galaxy didn't look very good their first two matches.
Do you think Carlos Vela would be successful in every team he'd go to?
Yes.
Even playing on turf for teams that are not.
Yes. I think you could plug him in any team, and he would make that team. He would make that team at the very least probably a playoff team. I don't want to say that. There's probably a couple teams who.
Could you imagine him being with Atlanta? Like maybe I'm gonna roast it because people are gonna say, "Well, he's not gonna fit." Blah 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 blah. Frank de Boer's system is not.
You make Carlos Vela fit.
You make Carlos Vela fit, but I think he'd be very good. I think what makes Carlos Vela good and why he produces so well is that he has players around him that are decently good, right? Could you say that about Ibrahimovic with the Galaxy last year. Obviously, Pavone was a great addition, but how many of the players with the Galaxy would have started in that LAFC squad? It's a fascinating question. Anyway, listeners, question of the day: what MLS player would you want on your team if you could have them? Is it as simple as Carlos Vela? Is it Joseph Martinez? Chicharito? You need the marketing? Maybe you're a team that needs some marketing, and you're like, screw that. We need.
Maybe you're FC Dallas,
Houston, Chicago. The list goes on. Anyway, listeners, let's get to Antoine.
Joining us now on the show is the editor-in-chief of Culture Soccer. You can follow him on Twitter at Antoine Letran. It is Antoine Letran. Antoine, how's it going?
Hi, guys. It's going really well. Yeah, thank you for having me on the show.
Well, Antoine, first of all, we're glad that you are safe. That is always most important in these dire times, it feels like. But man, it's been a crazy few weeks.
Yeah, it has. I really didn't see that coming. Like 2 weeks ago, everyone was just chilling about it. The MLS was starting to think about canceling the season, and then suddenly, after Italy, all the dominoes fell, one after each other. And here I am locked down in Paris. Haven't been out in like 5 or 6 days, and yeah, it's been crazy past week. But at least you get some work done being stuck at home.
Obviously, you're right now in France. You spend a lot of time in England and in France. But the reaction to coronavirus, and particularly to relating to soccer, to football, were people or were fans really that concerned, or did they really not care? They just wanted the seasons to go on and let's get these games played. I think the most vivid memory I have was watching Juventus, Inter Milan, these two heavyweights in Serie A this season, go at each other behind closed doors. And Jake, I remember you and I were texting each other, and you thought the game was horrendously boring because you just didn't have the fans. But Antoine, were people angry? Were they pissed that the games were being played behind closed doors? I mean, PSG played a Champions League against Dortmund behind closed doors at the Parc des Princes. So
yeah, there was different episode. I would say what's really interesting is it all started, I think, with the first leg of Lyon Juventus. That's when the crisis was starting to get really bad in Italy, and the UEFA and the Champions League still allowed all the Italian fans to come to Lyon. So that was like 3,000 people from the north of Italy. So it's not Milan at the time. Only Milan was touched by the virus. But 3,000 fans of Juventus came into Lyon, and people started to say, like, well, maybe it's not a good idea to have all these people coming into Lyon and then coming back. That's when, like, I think the opinion, just like the public audience, kind of started feeling that maybe that virus was more serious than we thought, because we could have to cancel things like that. For the PSG game, it was really weird because that was a week later. So I said like 2 weeks ago, something like that. And that was even weirder because they still had fans outside the stadium. There was something like 1,000 fans outside the stadium doing pyros and tifos and singing after the game. And the PSG players went to them, like Kurzawa, the back, I think right back, left back, can remember. But he was playing singing and celebrating with the fans outside the stadium after the game. And at the time, everyone was kind of saying like, wow, it's amazing. Look at the Parisian fans, so much passion. They're still here celebrating. But the day after, we saw like coverage from Italy, for example, where the lockdown was starting, and Italian press just saying they were totally unconscious and acting stupidly. So that's, I think, when people started to understand that maybe there's something more important than football, and that maybe the fans should not have done that. And then I was in the UK a week ago. And a week ago, at first, when all the games were getting cancelled in England, in France, in Spain, in Italy, the UK government decided first it should be played without any public in the stadium. But they still were going to do the games on. And then we started having like Arteta being the Arsenal head coach being tested positive. And then I can remember, I think someone from, was it Manchester? I can remember someone getting tested positive too. That's when I think when people realize, well, maybe we should do without football. It's been an interesting week because obviously everyone's stuck at home and there's nothing to watch. But a a lot of football channels are just broadcasting old games. And I think right now there's only one championship, which is the Belarusian one, that is still on because the number of cases is really, really low there. And it's funny on Twitter, I see people just starting to get into the Belarusian championship because, I don't know, some people just love betting and they have no games to bet on. So they just started watching that. And the Australian one, they're still playing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny about the betting bit there, Antoine, because you have sports books over here in the U.S. that are taking bets on the U.S. Democratic presidential debates and things like that, amongst other things. Just for context, too, for that PSG Dortmund game, that was on March 11th. That was only 10 days ago. It feels like that was weeks and months ago.
Oh my God, that was 10 days ago. And yeah, we're recording this obviously on Saturday, March 21st. Wow, that feels
amazing.
Ago.
Yeah.
But Antoine, I wanted to ask you this because for us over here in America, I feel like we started taking coronavirus seriously when everyone found out Tom Hanks had it. Like that was the moment, like oh, Tom Hanks has it. Like that for whatever reason that seemed to really click into people's heads. Was there a moment in Europe when people started to take it seriously? If it was due to maybe the Daniel Rugani, the defensive back for Juventus, or was it kind of just, a lot of people are dying now, maybe we should take this seriously?
It's a bit weird. I think, Italy was really, maybe not Rugani, but just Italy in general, when they decided to have a lockdown. I mean, in Spain, in France, or even the UK, I think they're starting a lockdown now. We kind of knew a couple of days before, it's going to be coming because Italy had it a week before. But when Italy had it, it was really just waking up one morning and seeing on my phone, oh, shit, Italy is in entire lockdown. People cannot get outside of their house or anything. So I think that's when the rest of Europe started to think that there was a massive crisis. But then, there's some delays. France took, I think, a week before doing their own lockdown. The UK is just starting right now. And a lot of people have been criticizing their prime minister for not doing enough at the right moment. But in terms of football events, I think it is, actually a week ago. So a week ago was 14th. Yeah, on the 13th, I remember, just all the championship starting to say that we're not going to play this weekend, one after the other. But yeah, on the 12th of March, or more than a week ago, I was still playing football myself, outside, and no one was, I was still handshaking people after the game or things like that. No one really cared. And it's really on the Friday after when all the Liga, the Ligue 1, the Premier League started to, and MLS started to console each one of the games. And that's when it started to feel really real. I think that was the wake-up call. Although then, politics got involved and all the presidents of every nation started to decide of a lockdown. But yeah, in terms of football, I think it was the Friday the 13th when everything got really crazy.
Europe, you have all these different competitions, Champions League, Europa League, but you have, the Premier League, Serie A, Ligue 1, Bundesliga, go on and on and on. In the United States, we have MLS, but you also have the NBA, the NFL, MLB, NHL. You have all these other sports going on, like in Europe, but obviously the United States is kind of the epicenter for the world's greatest athletes when it comes to hockey, the NBA, NFL. So what are fans doing? What's the chatter around town like without sports?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I don't know. I think it's sort of movies, politics, whatever you've seen on Netflix the other day, on TV. But yeah, we don't. It's funny, we talk a lot more about football than any other sport because obviously, except from the Olympics maybe, or when there's a Rugby World Cup, or right now in rugby there was a Six Nation. But except from these big events, there's a minority of them who still watch rugby every week, but people don't generally talk about, have you seen the rugby result from last week? Whereas in the US, yeah, indeed, you have all the other sports that are, more prevalent than soccer. But I think, in France, it was mostly football. So right now, people just send a lot of memes. There's been some really good coronavirus memes, but we just talk about, memes, health, is your family all right? Yeah, and whatever politics or doing and saying about the crisis right now. But yeah, I've seen, I think 2 days ago, Blaise Matuidi, French midfielder, got tested positive for the virus. So it's starting to, feel really real because a lot of famous people, like you said, with Tom Hanks, are getting it. And people are being way more cautious right now, which is probably a good thing. But yeah, it's going to be an intriguing couple of weeks. People are doing challenges on social networks and trying to to get themselves entertained while they're confined at home.
You're not on that TikTok game like Jake is?
I was on the TikTok. I was on the TikTok game.
So I'm not, but I must admit that yesterday I had to film myself juggling with toilet paper. So I'm not perfect anyway.
Yeah. I know Jake's doing all the. I'm not on TikTok whatsoever, but Jake was sending me a couple of his dancing routines that everyone's doing.
Yeah. Okay. Antoine, we asked. You mentioned toilet paper, so I had to ask you this because we asked our last guest who was on earlier this week, Eric Gomez, who helped us talk about how things were going on in Mexico. Toilet paper situation for you. How are you doing? Is it? I know over here people are rating the supermarkets of
it's gold.
Yeah, it literally is gold right now.
Mm. Well, when I was in England 10 days ago, so a good 10 days before the lockdown actually started in England, people were getting crazy about that. I remember just going to the shop at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. There was no toilet paper for a couple of days. People were really going crazy, but way in advance, which is really interesting. I don't know why people were rating on that and pasta. It was amazing. At a point, I just needed some, not even for the quarantine. I needed some toilet paper, and I got like bad looks of people because I was just taking some. So it was getting really mad in here. But right now, I think people started to, to get more relaxed about it. In Paris, a lot of people, the people that can afford it, went to their holiday house or family maybe in the countryside to have a nicer lockdown. So the shops are getting fuller because less people buy it, and it's getting a bit better now. So if you're in the US, don't buy 3 or 4 packs of toilet paper. You should be all right for the next couple of weeks. And maybe wait a bit. And as soon as the confinement starts, people just start acting normally. I think It's just that they're stressed out right now.
And let's talk about sports. Let's talk about soccer here. Let's turn the page as we try on every show is actually talk about sports. And Jake, you and I were going a little bit back and forth. This is obviously started with Eric Gomez, who covers MLS and Liga MX. Antoine, when it comes to comparing the two leagues, obviously you did have the Frenchman Gignac play in Mexico. So maybe there was a little bit of more tilt in France regarding Liga MX. But when it comes to the European landscape of soccer, is MLS more talked about than Liga MX, or is it the other way around?
If you ask, I think, just a normal football fan in France or in England, they would probably think that MLS is way better than Liga MX. Just because they don't know at all about Mexican league. It's really interesting, but because we had all these big stars going to the United States and Canada, people just don't really know much about the Mexican league. It's not on any TV channels, or at least it wasn't a couple of years ago, I think. Whereas MLS has always kind of been somewhere on TV. And just the fact that a lot of football stars were going to MLS, people just think it's better than the Mexican league.
Now, Antoine, when you look at MLS, this is kind of always an interesting thought I play around in my head, and I know Steven and I we've had this discussion in the past two. If you were to take the best team in MLS right now, could they?
Who is it, Jake? Who's the best team in MLS right now?
I mean, it's LAFC. That has to be the best team. Would LAFC survive in the Premier League or Ligue 1? I guess you're the Frenchman, so we'll use Ligue 1 for this scenario here. Would they stay up?
It is so tough because obviously they don't have the same salary caps and requirements than Ligue 1 team. They have constraints, but I would think they could be in the bottom of Ligue 1 or maybe top of Ligue 2, just because they got way better players maybe up front. I mean, Carlos Vela couldn't be in any other team than PSG or maybe Lyon or I don't know, Marseille in France, but I think they would get destroyed in the back line. Like MLS is
depth
really
problems,
difficult.
Right? Isn't that the big knock on MLS? Is that sure you could have the Carlos Vela who can easily play at PSG, Marseille, Lyon, whatever the top clubs in Europe. Let's be honest. Wasn't there a rumor that Vela was linked with Barcelona? But the problem with MLS and these questions is the bottom ends of the rosters aren't very good. And I think that is a big detriment to the league is when you do have injuries or when you need the depth. It's like you got a bunch of no-names that you kind of like. I guess they're professional soccer players, but they don't wow you like the bench of some of these clubs.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think there's two sides of it. It is so for a American fan, it could be frustrating, obviously, that yeah, your team will probably never be able to compete because of salary constraints with other European teams. But for an external point of view, I actually kind of like the fact that there is certain equity in the league thanks to some salary constraints. It makes the league more challenging for clubs. It is really interesting because like a technical director has to really think about where to put his money because there's a constraint of money. It's not like in Europe where clubs can just spend a lot of money, especially in the Premier League, for example. And from an external point of view like mine, that's why I got into MLS, is because all these funky rules are actually really fun to watch, and they put another level of strategy into the game. It's not just about what's on the field. It's what you can do with that money and how to get smart and how to sometimes take advantage of the rules. So, I mean, for you, it is a problem because obviously there's going to have Champions League and MLS get beaten up every year by Mexican teams. But from just a pure MLS kind of point of view, it is really exciting to see how they get past the rules and try to handle all the money that they're given by every club.
Antoine, do you think that sort of thing, that cap restraint, do you think we'll ever see that in Europe? 10, 20 years from now. I know they were toying with the European Super League, if you will, around this time last year with Bayern Munich and Barcelona and Real Madrid and all the mega clubs over in Europe. Do you ever think that there's going to come a point where we're just going to create maybe like a Super League and we're just going to cap spending, and that's how teams are going to be able to build a roster underneath those cap constraints?
I surely think that some presidents would love this. I mean, I'm thinking of the Juventus president who said like a week or two ago that he doesn't think that Atalanta has his place in Champions League because they're not a big club. That's just for me, it's just BS. But except from that, so yeah, I think his or the Lyon president or the PSG president would be really happy with the European Super League. But I think every fan of football just has to hate it. It's just such a bad idea. It would kill every local clubs. It would really be a bad thing. I mean, I get why they have it in the US and MLS. I'm not trying to get into the promotion relegation kind of debate, but I get why they needed it at the beginning to kind of stabilize the game in North America. In Europe, it would be just such a shame, and it would kill off every single mid and low tier clubs. So I really hope that it doesn't happen. But it could really happen because obviously all the money now is in the hands of big clubs, so they can do kind of whatever they want. So yeah.
You don't want the promotion relegation crew, whatever they're called, mafia, coming after you?
I'm pretty neutral on that debate. To be fair, I see some point of view. I just find it's really annoying. It's really hard to have a proper debate without being, insulted or being totally, you have to take one side. Whereas I think there's shades of gray. It's not just black and white on that issue.
No, I think it's a fascinating debate. Now, obviously, we're only two match days in MLS, but Antoine, I mean, going into the season, was there a particular club that you had your eye on saying, oh, they could be fascinating? I mean, is there any draw to watching Montreal with French legend Thierry Henry?
Well, first of all, it attracted so many French journalists to MLS. It's really interesting how as soon as Henry was signed, you had like a little bit of MLS in every newspaper, sporting newspaper, not general, but sporting newspaper. You always had, for the first 2 weeks, a tiny, tiny little pages about what Montreal and MLS is doing right now, which you didn't have before. Even when Henry was there, you had sometimes some news about it, but not that much. Whereas Henry really brought a spotlight from France to MLS, so that's pretty cool at first. But if not, I'd say before the season started and with the two first games, I was really hyped by Colorado Rapids. I think they've done a really good job in terms of recruitment. I really like Nicolas Benezer. I really like Andrei Shinyashiki, Jack Price. They have a really solid team from maybe from the defender to the striker. Maybe the goalkeepers are not the best players right now, but I think they could probably get one in the summer or something. But I really like this team of the Colorado Rapids. And, we were talking about the rules of MLS and how you have to play with them. I think they've done really well in, drafting Shinyashiki, for example, or getting some trade within MLS, getting like Kellyn Acosta, Jonathan Lewis, or Keegan Rosenberry. So, yeah, I think the team I'm more hyped about is the Colorado Rapids right now.
And Antoine, what were your thoughts on Atlanta United when Joseph Martinez went down? This is actually kind of a two-part question here. So give us your thoughts on Atlanta United now that Joseph Martinez is out for the season. And also, do you, keeping up with the French trend here with the question that Steven has asked you, could we potentially see maybe an Olivier Giroud maybe fill in for him this summer? Maybe Atlanta moves. I'm just saying he's been linked. He's been linked to MLS like for the last 6 months.
New England Revolution. That's where I want him.
I keep seeing him. I could totally see Atlanta making some moves to free up an open DP slot and bring in Olivier Giroud.
I don't know if it works like that.
Get rid of Pity.
Okay,
Get rid of Barco.
Said and done.
It's funny. I literally like 25 minutes ago just tweeted that I fucking love Giroud and I would love to see him in MLS. He's such a good player. I've been like a massive fan of him. I'm a Chelsea fan, and obviously during the World Cup 2018, as a French man, it was so good to have him on that team. I know he's not your regular type of striker. I don't know if he would suit in Atlanta United's style of play. I would really actually doubt it. Adam Jan has been proving that a target striker is not maybe the best thing they need.
Doesn't he fit better with the Galaxy?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, rather than crossing balls to Chicharito, maybe crossing to someone that's actually tall would be
right. But I say that jokingly, but it would make sense. You would have this Ibrahimovic. You wouldn't have the baggage that came with Ibrahimovic, but you do have this tall central figure, and then Chicharito could run the channels. I don't know if it necessarily works money wise, but I think it'd be very interesting to see somebody paired up with Chicharito because. Jake, you watched the Houston LA Galaxy game. Yes, it's one game and it's the beginning of the season, but boy, it was not pretty.
No, the Galaxy have not been fun to watch for at least the last 16 months. I mean, unless it's an LAFC LA Galaxy match. I just don't. There's nothing about the Galaxy that wows me, or there's nothing that's impressive. Like you said, the Dynamo and Galaxy match, it was a snooze fest, and then they go and lose to the Whitecaps the next week at home, 1-0 defeat. So yeah, it's just cross after cross after cross,
and their home opener too.
Yeah, I just don't see how that's going to work with Chicharito. Not to mention too, Christian Pavon's really good on the ball, so I'm not sure why their sole focus is just to lob balls into the box and hope that Chicharito can get on the end of one. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and Qatar is also really, really good on the ball, so I don't get it neither. What's funny is that for the next maybe 2 months, we're going to talk about the Galaxy with only like 2 games played in the beginning of March. It's going to be an interesting time to analyze clubs. But I would love Giroud maybe in Montreal. That would be, I think, a good club for him. And they have, the space for designated player to sign him. But literally, as soon as he left Arsenal, I just thought he has to come to MLS. He'd be the perfect profile because in MLS the defense are really physical, and he could play with that and be a good target man.
Antoine, well, it'll be interesting to see, maybe Giroud will come this summer. Maybe it'll be next year. Who knows? I agree with you. I think he's destined to play in MLS, but we always appreciate your time. Maybe it's Miami. Maybe, who knows? I think they're waiting for Messi. I think they're waiting for Messi.
Ronaldo, Cavani, Suarez, pretty much anybody who's ever played for Barcelona or Real Madrid is somehow linked with David Beckham's club.
Yep. Yeah.
Everyone that played in a big club, I think, is linked with David Beckham's club.
Yeah, that sounds like Miami. But Antoine, thanks again for joining us. Tell our listeners where we can find your work and where we can find you on social media.
It was a great pleasure, guys. I'm really happy I've been here. So social media at Antoine Letran or at Culture Soccer. If you want just a direct link to our work, we've got the website www.culturesoccer.com. And just a lot of content in French. Literally every league. So MLS, USL, Women's Soccer, NISA, whatever you want. We got a Canadian Premier League too. So feel free to have a look at that if you speak French. We'll be happy to have your question. And I'm really glad I was here. And thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, merci beaucoup, and stay safe out there.
I'll try to. Thank you, guys.
Big shout out, big thank you to Antoine for joining us. And Jake, I have no idea what we're going to do on future episodes come midweek next week. I know we have some fantastic guests. Obviously, we're doing an episode regarding the U.S. women's national team. We got a teaser here regarding USL. So we got some fantastic content coming up with great guests. But, I don't know if we have like a ESPN or an Uncle Sam's version of the Ocho or something.
Maybe we'll do SB Nation. I saw this yesterday where you have to post. You have $15 and you have to build your best 6 Pokemon team or whatever the hell that was that they posted. I just thought, oh my God, sports sites have really gone downhill in the last week. Now that
we could probably do an episode on like the ideal shin guard for a professional footballer.
Yeah, I got some ideas. I got an idea on a show we can do next week. So don't. It's not all doom and gloom just yet, listeners.
Yeah, listeners, be safe out there. Check in on your friends. Obviously, social distance. Do what you need to. Be smart. At Unc Sam Soccer Pod, at Jake Rotroba, at Steven Jodrand. And until next time.